This is VOA News. I'm Marissa Melton. Electricity has been restored in the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson after its liberation earlier this month from Russian occupation. This, according to a senior presidential aide on Saturday. Christmas preparations are ramping up across Europe. However, many cities are weighing whether or not to light their streets as the energy crisis takes hold. AP correspondent Karen Chamas has more.
Excited Parisians count down as Paris's mayor, alongside several celebrities, pushes the button, setting the whole of the famous Champs-Élysées alight. However, unlike Christmases gone, the lights in the French capital this year will turn off over 2 hours earlier at 11:45 p.m. Officials throughout Europe are wrestling with a difficult choice. Either they create holiday cheer that may help boost the economy, or they dim the Christmas lights this year in solidarity with their citizens who may be struggling with higher energy bills. In Denmark, they're striving for a happy balance, as the park director of Tivoli Gardens, Kasper Schumacher, tells the AP.
We are looking at our rides. We are making sure that rides are full before we start them up, and then we shut down the lights during night times when we are closed.
Karen Chamas, London.
Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said on Saturday that militia forces have sacrificed their lives in what he called riots, the wave of protests sparked by the death and custody of a young Iranian Kurdish woman in September. The protest began after that have turned into one of the boldest challenges in recent history to the nation's clerical leadership. You can find more on this and all the stories we're covering at our website, voanews.com. From Washington, this is VOA News. The commander of the main U.S.-backed Kurdish-led force in Syria said on Saturday that they've halted operations against the Islamic State group due to Turkish attacks on northern Syria over the past week. Mazloum Abdi of the Syrian Democratic Forces told reporters that after nearly a week of Turkish airstrikes on northern Syria, Ankara is now preparing for a ground offensive. He said Turkey-backed opposition fighters are getting ready to take part in the operations. Abdi added that Turkish strikes over the past week have caused severe damage to the region's infrastructure. He said Turkey is taking advantage of the deadly November 13th bombing in Istanbul that Ankara blames on Kurdish groups. Kurdish organizations have denied any involvement in the Istanbul attack that killed 6 people and wounded dozens. The startup behind India's first private space launch plans to put a satellite into orbit in 2023 and expects to be able to do so at half the cost of established launch companies. That's where the founders of Skyroot Aerospace told Reuters in an interview. The company, backed by Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, says the $68 million it has raised will fund its next 2 launches. It's Small Business Saturday, the day wedged between Black Friday and Cyber Monday to shop at locally owned stores in the United States. AP correspondent Julie Walker has the story.
Awesome Brooklyn is a small gift store that just hit the 5-year mark, and owner Vanessa Raptopoulos calls it her baby.
My neighbors and my customers are like the best people ever. They get me up in the morning. They get me motivated to find them the best gifts in Brooklyn.
Nicole Hill and Brad Klemavicius recently moved to Brooklyn from Canada, and it's their first Small Business Saturday.
We're getting some ornaments. We don't have any of our holiday ornaments.
Supporting the people that live in the community instead of just giant corporations that don't really care where you buy their stuff.
Julie Walker, New York.
Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong received a top post in the ruling party on Saturday, cementing his position to become the city-state's next prime minister. The current prime minister announced this year that Wong would succeed him. The Vatican on Saturday accused Chinese authorities of violating a bilateral pact on the appointment of bishops by installing one in a diocese not recognized by the Holy See. A statement said the Vatican learned with surprise and regret that a bishop of another city had been installed as auxiliary bishop in Jiangxi. And Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan told tens of thousands of supporters on Saturday he would fight with his last drop of blood in a first public address since being shot in an assassination attempt earlier this month. Marissa Melton, VOA News.
This is VOA News. I'm Joe Ramsey. Police detained several people in Shanghai on Sunday. Crowds of demonstrators shouted and held up blank sheets of paper in rare open protests against the Chinese government. Social media footage showed police detaining a man holding flowers and protesting, as well as a man who was subdued on the road. The protests flared up in China against heavy COVID-19 curbs following a deadly fire in the country's far west that sparked widespread anger. Waves of civil disobedience have included protests in cities including Beijing, unprecedented in mainland China since President Xi Jinping assumed power a decade ago. Shelling by Russian forces hit several areas in eastern and southern Ukraine, AP correspondent Mimi Montgomery reports.
The Institute for the Study of War, a think tank that closely monitors developments in Ukraine, says Russian forces were digging in further east of the city of Kherson, from which they were recently expelled by Ukrainian forces. The attacks happened as utility crews continue to scramble to restore power, water, and heating after widespread strikes in recent weeks. And with persistent snowfall, including in the capital of Kiev, analysts are predicting that wintry weather with frozen terrain and grueling fighting conditions could have an increasing impact on the direction of the conflict. I'm Mimi Montgomery.
Eyewitnesses and aid workers say that allies of Ethiopia's federal military are looting property and carrying out mass detentions in Tigray. The accounts raise fresh concern about alleged atrocity after the warring party signed a truce more than 3 weeks ago. This is VOA News. Search teams in Italy have pulled the body of a young girl from her family home as they dig through mud for a second day in the search for people still missing after an enormous landslide on an Italian resort island near Naples. The prefect confirmed the death toll in the tragedy had risen to 2, also following the recovery of the body of a 31-year-old woman from the island on Saturday. A further 10 people remain missing and feared buried under mud and debris. Former U.S. President Donald Trump's political friends and foes are reacting to his dinner last week with 2 controversial figures, the rapper formerly known as Kanye West and a white nationalist leader. AP correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
When Donald Trump was president, David Friedman was his ambassador to Israel. Friedman's tweeted out, quote, "To my friend Donald Trump, you are better than this. Even a social visit from an anti-Semite like Kanye West and human scum like Nick Fuentes is unacceptable." West has been dropped by companies like Adidas for recent anti-Semitic comments. Nick Fuentes is a far-right activist who denies the Holocaust and expresses anti-Semitic and white nationalist rhetoric. The White House issued a statement. Bigotry, hate, and anti-Semitism have absolutely no place in America, including at Mar-a-Lago. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Thousands of Moroccans watching on a big screen in a stadium in Casablanca celebrated on Sunday as their national soccer team claimed their first World Cup victory in 24 years, winning 2-0 against Belgium. It was Morocco's first win at a World Cup since they beat Scotland in 1998. They left the 2018 tournament without a single point. Police have sealed off parts of the center of Brussels and moved in with water cannons to disperse crowds following violence in the wake of Morocco's upset win over Belgium at the World Cup. Dozens of rioters set steps on fire and pelted cars with bricks. Morocco's victory was a major upset at the World Cup and was enthusiastically celebrated by fans with Moroccan immigrant roots in many Belgian cities. Meanwhile, a city in Thailand laid out plates of fruits, desserts, and vegetables on Sunday for thousands of monkeys as a token of appreciation for attracting foreign tourists to the city after a pandemic-induced lull. Workers and tourists dishing out 2 tons of fruits and vegetables. I'm Joe Ramsey, VOA